just be the best you can be. That's how we all do this. Just really come from the pure place of your heart, and don't doubt anything. Don't doubt who you are. Don't be afraid. You are unlimited, and we are infinite beings, and we are meant to express that in every second of our being. And so don't play small. Don't be arrogant. Be loving and kind and humble, but definitely don't be afraid. There is absolutely nothing to be afraid of. And enjoy the journey. It's just so much fun, Just enjoy it all. And be the best you can be.
You got to accentuate the positive. Wow, I feel good. A little bit of feel good goes a long way.
You're listening to Karen Swain, teacher of deliberate creation, accentuating the positive, showing you a way to a better life.
Accentuating the positive, it's not just fad, it's sanity. Who in their right mind would accentuate anything else?
If you feel like that's what you want to do.
Hello and welcome to another show, Accentuating the Positive with Karen Swain. As always, beautiful to see you all again. And you think I can't see you through Zoom? I can. I'm a bit off the air again this morning. I have, please, I say to everyone, like and subscribe and share the shows with your friends and do all that stuff. I really appreciate it. When you leave a comment, the algorithms pick that up, and the more comments under the shows, the more they share the shows with others. But anyway, aside from all that, I've got the beautiful and delicious Debz Shakti on the show with me today. Welcome, Debz.
Oh, thank you so much, Karen. I am so honored to be here. I adore you. So I feel like you're a soul twin. So
soul sisters.
Ask whatever you like. I'm an open book, and most of the time I don't know what's going to come out of my mouth anyway. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I hear you, darling. I hear you. So this is a bit of synchronicity that happened. I had somebody else booked in because I booked the show months in advance, but she didn't get back to me. We had a nice email exchange, and then the email exchange stopped, and the booking that I had for her wasn't confirmed. And so after I spoke to John, so for people that don't know, Debz is the healer and the hypnotherapist in the film Alien Abduction Answers with John Yost, by John Yost, and I had John on the show last week, and I was just saying, Debz and I connected through Facebook, I think, and I said, you know what, the person that I had booked in for this week has not confirmed. Would you like to jump in, like synchronistically, just after I've spoken to John, instead of it being months, afterwards?
Yeah.
So this happened, and I love the way the universe does that. But for people that don't know about who Debz is and hasn't seen the film, because you feature in the film, you're kind of like the star of the film in many ways, even though Whitley Strieber is a big part of the film.
Yeah.
Because John sent me the film and I watched it just like the night before I chatted with him. Let me read your bio. So Debz says, I just love everyone, our planet, and everything that makes up life. I'm doing my best to work my purpose, my dharma, to assist as many people as possible to become consciously balanced and sustained in self-awareness, most of all, to be and share and teach love. Debz has had incredible lifelong contact and consciousness experience coming into this world with all her superpowers turned on, perceiving and working multidimensionally as an open channel and energy worker. The most popular group she channels are the group of entities known as the Star Teachers, or simply the Teachers, who say they are us, who have evolved to a higher frequency and are assisting us, humanity, with the ascension right now. Debz Shakti is a globally renowned and professional quantum hypnotherapist, 40 years of service, an open channel offering professional PSI services, including energy alchemy, ET contact, and paranormal experience counseling. She's a lifelong yogi and has 50 years of teaching yoga, including breath work, meditation, and sound therapy mantra. She is also a national champion martial artist, fitness instructor, competitor and a published author who lovingly hosts a long-standing local CE5 contact and consciousness group. That sounds like fun. I wish I was in your group.
Oh.
And is an
Me
active
too.
member of several international CE5 contact teams researching the infinite nature of consciousness. Deb offers personal sessions as well as group experiences and workshops, retreats, conferences, being a presenter and guide. Her personal life is spent loving her family, husband, 2 sons, 4 grandchildren and their mothers, and 2 rambunctious rescue dogs. Organic gardening, eco-activism, hiking, and looking up at the stars. And obviously, we've just said that you're in the film Alien Abductions, and you've written many books, including Kickboxing for Women, Dojo Wisdom. What's Dojo? Martial Arts for Dummies. What's Dojo?
Dojo is the, you think of when you go to practice yoga, at least in the Western world, you go to a yoga studio. A dojo is where you go to learn and practice martial arts.
Ah, beautiful, beautiful.
But Dojo Wisdom, I'm just in the book and featured in the book as my good friend and one of my teachers writes about. It's kind of metaphors from martial arts training that we've done together, and she puts it into real life situations. So it's kind of like, it's kind of like the I Ching, only in modern terms. So
right.
Hope that,
You know, I want to talk about the teachers that channel through you and their message, because I'm loving that. But let's start with the film and how John found you. How did John find you to open up his consciousness to remember what was happening? So in the film, he's had some experiences and he's got missing time, and then he's trying to sort it all out, and he finds you. How did that happen?
Serendipitously, like everything in my life, I met John through a dear friend who is in the CE5 community, the contact community. And he asked me to, he invited me to a meeting with John and another person who John was working with on another film. It was just an introductory meeting. Like, they just wanted to find out more about who I was, because at one of these major CE5 training retreats that we worked at together, right in the middle of contact, in the middle of the night, you know, we're out there in the boonies outside in the dark in a circle with all these people. And I guess I started channeling spontaneously. I never know. And my friend literally recorded it. He got the recorder right up there and recorded the whole thing. And it was like a message to the world. And it was very profound. I don't remember it at all. But anyway, he wanted to share it with John and this other person who was interested in making a movie about contact, because they thought they might want to, you know, put a little bit of that in the film, amongst many other things. So I had a little meeting with these people, fell in love with both of them. But during the meeting, I was so distracted because I kept getting, you know, I will not look at someone else's, you know, energy field or their aura or whatever you want to call that. I don't look unless I'm asked, you know, but John was just transmitting all kinds of pain and I don't know, stealthiness and everything. But, you know, he's just the most open person you could ever want. Anyway, long story short, the meeting was wonderful. It was hopeful. But afterwards, I had this nagging, you know, the teachers kept saying, you need to contact him and give him a session right away. He's in pain. And I thought, my gosh, I don't even have his phone number. I think I have an email address, but he doesn't know me from Adam other than this little, you know, half-hour conversation. And he's a big-time film producer, blah, blah, blah. No, he'll think I'm crazy, because he really wasn't that much into all that stuff back then. But for 2 days, they kept up. I couldn't sleep. They were just like, you know, smacking me in the face with a board saying, you have to contact us. So I sent him an email and I just said, I am being told that I need to gift you a session, that you're in pain, you're withholding something and it's causing you pain. And then I hit send and I'm like, oh, that was so embarrassing. Well, the same day I got a message back and he said, how do you know? And then so we talked, he called and we talked, and he started to tell me a little bit of his story, what he felt he could share, because he was very closed about it at first. And that's how we met, and that's how we started working together. But please know, it took a year and a half, maybe 2 years, at least a year and a half before he would go into that particular situation to see what he called the big one with the experience that you see in the movie. So anyway, but we did some little mini ones, happy little ones, where he could get used to going through the hypnosis, through the quantum hypnosis, and feel secure that he was going to be okay. So he had a lot of fear. And then I didn't hear from him for a while. And then one day he called me and he said, I'm ready to do the big one. And I said, good, let's get you on the books and let's do this. And he said, no, I think you don't understand. I'm ready to do the big one, but I want to do it real time on film. I think it'll be helpful to others. And I've never allowed even another person in the room, when I'm doing them face to face or even over Zoom. It has to be private. I was like, whoa, I had a whole lot of resistance to that. Like, are you sure you can even handle that with your film crew and everybody? And so we worked it, and it was in the middle of the pandemic when you couldn't travel. But he said, we're going to do this. And it just kept working out. So that was the beginning of the film. I really thought the film was just going to be about that at first. And then he started realizing, oh gosh, so I was talking about all the other experiencers I've worked with over the decades. He said, do you think any of them would want to share their story on film? That might really add another dimension to the film. And so I queried a lot of people, and we came up with the ones that you see in the film. Unfortunately, we had some other really great ones who couldn't, because there were still travel bans, but we're glad, because we think they're going to be in the next one. So it'll be great. It'll be perfect. But that's how that happened.
It's so brave of people to share their story, on film like that. I do it all the time with guests that I have on the show, but there are so many people out there that have amazing stories that they'll never share with anybody because they're just so scared. And like John was, just sort of gripped in fear of what the whole thing was. But he does. So he does share his hypnotherapy session with you. So your quantum hypnotherapy, did you develop that yourself, or did you, is that?
I say I did, but let's just put things to right here, because people always ask me, did you study with Dolores Cannon?
Right.
Hers is called Quantum Healing Hypnotherapy. Yeah. And I had not ever heard of Dolores Cannon until about 10 or 12 years ago. I started out with clinical psych, and then the emphasis was on hypnosis and biofeedback. I worked at the PhD program for clinical psychology at a major university here where I live. And I worked directly with the dean of the program. And so, we did tons of research, wrote tons of books, blah, blah, blah. And that's where I started. But in clinical, early on, I started, he'd be supervising me. It's like, you can't do that energy stuff while you're in the session. You can't tell people that someone else is speaking through you when you're trying to, counsel them. And so early on, and he was very sweet, but he said, you can't do that in the clinical setting. You're going to have to make a decision. It's this or this, but you can't have it both. And I said, well, I'm just going to go off on my own then, because I felt like that's an incomplete, it's a disservice to the person you're working with if you have other gifts and can't use them. So I've always been very scientific minded, and I was very, very interested, just starting to learn about quantum physics, and suddenly realized all of this work that's happening. I wasn't just regressing people to their childhood or their babyhood, but to what one would call past lives. And back then, that was even taboo to talk about. But in studying quantum physics, I realized that's not past lives. They're all congruent. They're all happening all at once together forever, right? And you have to tune into the right one to get the right information, because people kept going to what you would call the future, or a different planet, or a different dimension, or inexplicable things. So the process sort of evolved organically as I was working with people with that liberated kind of construct. When I did find out about Dolores Cannon, I was a little bit miffed. I'm like, gosh, I should have trademarked that name a long time ago. She's making tons of money. I didn't know who she was. And then I started reading her books and listening to her lectures. And I thought, what in the world? And I actually have a friend who was trained under her. So I said, I want a session of that. I want that. And you do it with me. The verbiage is almost exactly the same. The process is almost exactly the same. The only difference is I bring in some, I think they're pre-yogic techniques, but ancient techniques for breath work, mantra, and some other things to prepare the person to activate the pineal gland, the third eye, so that you can receive and tune into these other realities better. So I give people homework before they can come to my session, and homework afterwards. So that's the only difference. But so in meditation, I was asking, how can this be? How can this be? We're saying a lot of the things, even just verbatim, exactly the same. And immediately the answer came back. This process was placed in the global grid of third dimensional Earth life about 60 to 70 years ago of your time. And around 1,000 people were in the proper vibration where they could receive it. And you are one of them. She was one of them. Everybody did what they were supposed to do with it. She went off and did all the fantastic things she did. And I continued to just work with clients and be of service to people that way. And they said, some people never did anything with it. Just, it was a cool thing that they learned. So like everything, I think that we are inspired to develop or learn, it's there in the field. And you have to just be in the right place at the right time to tune into it and receive it. And then you have free will to do with it what you will. But it's been it was weird enough before that happened. But then after I found that out, I'm like, wow, I feel very honored, but it works. It works so well. It's amazing.
Absolutely. I kind of knew that when I saw you in the film, but I needed to ask that question because I know that everybody's like, she doing? Because Dolores took it and ran with it and has made it
queen.
Yeah, she's, but what I love about what you're doing, which she doesn't teach and she didn't do, and she was very adamant about it. She's like, now I'm not psychic. This isn't me. And she was very adamant about not being psychic and letting the information come purely from her clients. But I actually think as a psychic and someone who does this work, being psychic is so much, well, I can't say it's better, but it helps the process. So, because people can get stuck in their fear, and when you're kind of in there with them and you can see their fear and you can see what they're looking at and what they don't want to look at, you can help them. And then the teachers, like I remember I had a client 20 years ago, and I asked a question like his mother had died when he was a kid, And he had
Oh.
grieved the loss of his mother, like he was two, and that he'd held onto a guilt that said, was it my fault that she died? And he was in his 60s, this guy.
Oh, wow.
So I remember asking a question and he said, no. And then the guides popped in and they said, like teachers, like they don't tell you what to do. They just guide you, like a teacher would guide you, and said, ask a different question, ask the same question in a different way. And so I asked the same question in a different way, and it had a completely different response from him. And he just burst into tears as he had this incredible realization. So having that guidance, you know, it's like having the teachers with you that are guiding you through your session as well as guiding the client. And I think that's the next step in quantum hypnosis. It really is.
I do too. And you're seeing a lot of people branch out from what one would call the traditional QHHT modality. You know, Dolores had a very, very adamant rule that you must be in person, face to face. And also, I can't remember, there were some other differences there, but and I've asked about that too. I'm like, am I breaking a rule or something? And they're like, no, this is a different time and everything is accelerated, and use the technology that you can use, because this technology is training wheels for the greater population for having true telepathy, or I and a few others like to call it telepathy. You know, heart to heart, you just know what the other person is. You're just there with the other person. And I have to say that in my sessions, because of who I am, I'm able to, I don't just guide them in their journeys. I'm literally with them. Sometimes I'm literally in them and experiencing it the same way they are. And then I have the teachers or sometimes their guides also advising. And it's just this beautiful, comprehensive experience that it's ineffable. It's really hard to describe, but it seems to work and people seem to like it. So I'm happy. And it continues to evolve. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I was just saying to Debz before we turned on the camera last night, I was looking at some YouTubes, I think, of people that want to come on the show. I can't remember, looking at some YouTubes of people. And in the sidebar, I saw this thing about the Judds, the Judd sisters, the singers. And my curiosity got the better of me. I looked at it and I found out that Naomi Judd had died recently. And I'm like, oh. And so I'm just such a curious person. I always follow. Anyway, so this morning, I had a look at it. I watched the girls and I thought I'd let it go, and then, woke up this morning and Naomi Judd is still in my head. And I'm like, what? And she starts talking to me from spirit. She's like, I want to talk. So I was sharing that with Debz before, and you were sharing a beautiful story that happened with you and Whitley. Do you want to share that with us?
Sure. Yeah. For those who've seen the movie and those who haven't, Whitley Strieber is highly featured in our movie, and we're so grateful. What an experience. He's kind of the person who helped me, early on realize, oh, I'm not crazy. That I've seen that face, the cover of the iconic face on the cover of Communion. That book literally fell off of a bookshelf in the bookstore when I was looking for a potty training book when I was a young mother. It was not even in the right place. It fell off and hit me on the foot. And there's that face. And I thought, I've seen that face before. So I bought that book instead. But so from 1987 on, I've always wanted to at least meet him at some conference or something and tell him, I'm sure people tell him that all the time. But I really, that was a dream of mine. And then lo and behold, through all kinds of bizarre little things, he winds up in our movie. So I not only get to tell him, but, become a friend and he's just beautiful. But as many people do not know, his beloved wife, Anne, who he calls Annie, passed away a few years ago. And they were like peas in a pod, inseparable, although very different. And he, no matter, on his podcasts for Dreamland, on podcasts or interviews, he always seems to have her picture behind him, which I think is beautiful. And he wears 2 wedding rings. He wears her wedding ring and his. That's how devout of a husband he is. But anyway, so we're interviewing him in the movie, and we're off camera in front of him. John's asking him the provocative questions. He's being filmed. He's so wonderful. But he starts to talk about Annie's passing because it's important. We actually filmed footage that will be in vignettes later on, available, especially like on the DVD about this. She plays a big part. But anyway, so he's telling this story of how they fell in love, how they got married, their life together, and then eventually how she passed. And it was heart-wrenching. And in the middle of that part, he kind of became very emotional, and we had to cut film for a while. Well, during the time he was becoming very emotional and crying, the picture came alive. I'm facing him, and that picture is right behind him, and the picture came alive. She's kind of looking off this way, kind of wistfully, in this gorgeous black and white photograph. And suddenly she turns, looks at me, then she looks at him and goes, laughs, and then goes back into being the picture. And I was gobsmacked. Now, I've seen a lot, Karen. I have seen a lot in my life, but that took the cake. And so, he was really emotional. And we cut film. I went over and gave him a hug, and I wanted to console him. And I said, you're going to think I'm crazy, but seriously, Annie's picture came alive just now. And he sat up and he said, really? What'd she do? Like it wasn't a big deal. And I said, well, she kind of looked at me, and then she looked at you and went, and rolled her eyes, and then went back into the picture. And he goes, that's exactly what she would do. She would say, buck it up, Whit, buck it up, And he's like, that, I know that was her. That was her. She was really here. And he said, she does that with certain people, she must like you. And then it was, the air kind of cleared. So anyway, ever since then, now, like Naomi Judd with you, I've got Annie on my shoulder. She's in my meditations. She's in my out-of-body experiences. She's in my dreams. She's with me when I'm hiking. And she's a really great advisor. But I might be in a business meeting and she butts in. I'm listening to Annie. So I've learned.
She's got a lot to say.
She does.
Yeah, she's got a lot to say. I'm sitting here thinking about putting a few people on a round table that have all had loved ones pass, and that from the other side, they're all teachers from the other side and communicating through them, like that contract that they've had together. Anyway, because it just seems to be prevalent in my life right now. Somebody reached out to me, her son had passed, and I've put a lot of people on the show like that, whose son or husband or wife has passed, and from the other side they're guiding them and teaching through them, and they are so chatty, like Naomi was like, she said to me, I was chatty in my life and I'm still chatty. I got a lot to say. I got a lot better perspective on it now than I did when I was physical. And I'm like, okay.
Heaven help you, sister. I hope you get some sleep.
Anyway, they've got a lot to say. And you were sharing with me that Whitley has written a lot from Annie's teachings. So he's... Yeah,
Whitley, really, as far as I know, and you can look in the front covers of these books, but I think all the books he's written since her passing, he credits her as co-author. Mm-hmm. She literally, with a lot of them, especially Afterlife Revolution, which is actually the story of this and more, she's dictating to him.
Beautiful.
And he has said over the years that weird little implant that was in his ear or behind his ear that was so painful and everything, and he kept wanting to have it removed, and she kept saying, no, don't do it, but she would never say why. He says that is kind of that was his training wheels, his permission slip for her consciousness to start coming through right after she passed. I don't think he
Wow.
needs it anymore, but that's what
Right.
it was for. It was like his own personal radio receiver for her.
Wow.
Isn't
Training
that
wheels.
beautiful?
Yes, it really is. Yes.
He,
Training
I
wheels.
think he tried twice to have it removed, and both times the doctor could not remove it. It would move.
Huh?
And after that, Annie said, don't take it out. So she must have known, or at least had an inkling about what it was for. Isn't that incredible?
Yeah, it is. It really is. It really is. Because, we get so caught up in our logical minds and we block ourselves from receiving that subtle energy. And having a little implant that kind of accelerates, activates, I don't know, accentuates that energy so that you can feel it stronger. And then once you've acclimated to, you don't need it anymore. Yeah, that's fascinating. I've never heard that before.
Yeah, training wheels. I'm saying that's and really what the teachers have told me, because I get marks all the time. I had a triangle mark on my hand just a few days ago, just after I woke up. There it was.
Wow.
Looks like a bruise, but it's not. And then it goes away. I have had many clients come and say that they've had implants and they're afraid, they don't know what that means. But the teachers especially tell me that they're all beneficial like that. They have different purposes. Like some help the person not die from an autoimmune disease or something. They all have these different little purposes, but they're benevolent and they're assisting. And so, I'm just on that end of the spectrum. People think I'm too Pollyanna, but I have seen way too much to think anything else at this point.
Yeah, and where your focus goes, energy flows too. So the more Pollyanna you are, the more you attract positive experience, and the more negative you are, the more you attract negative experience. I mean, like, why wouldn't you be Pollyanna?
Yeah.
But let's get into your story. I'd love, so you hit the ground running, awake with all your abilities, or some people call them gifts. I call them abilities. I think we all have the ability to do what you do and what I do and what,
I do too.
When did you kind of realize who you were exactly, and when did the teachers introduce themselves to you?
Oh, some good questions. When I was a very young child, my first contact experience that I can truly remember, I was probably 2.5, 3 years old. But before that, even, I lived multidimensionally. I even had I had many other beings, interacting with me. But I had an entire other family overlaid my physical family experience. And, my parents just thought I was an imaginative kid and played along with it, but they all had names. I knew the occupation of the father, what the mother did, what the children did, what they look like, everything. And, they just thought, well, children have imaginary friends, and she's just, expanded it. But that wasn't true. I was just seeing into different frequencies and able to interact with them concurrent to this one. We could be sitting at the dinner table and I'm talking to my physical father, and over here I'm talking to my dimensional mother, at the same time. So I thought everybody lived that way. I didn't know till I went to school, and I went to Catholic school and immediately got sent home with a note that said, she thinks she talks to Jesus and we need to tell her that she can't. And I'm like, well, isn't that why we're here in this, and then I went back and I asked some other questions about, the book of Genesis. Like, it didn't make sense to me. And no offense to anyone here who is a Catholic or a Christian or anything. All faiths are good. They all, I think, are all based in truth. So when the humans start organizing is when it all kind of goes awry. But anyway, I quickly realized when I was in school that no one was having the experiences that I was. And I was already kind of introverted, but I became very, very introverted. And I had a very rich inner life. I would have rather died than answer a question out loud in school after that. But anyway, it got squelched for a few years. But fast forward, to my early teen years, when I became a yogi by sheer serendipity too. At that time was about when the revolution happened, the late 60s and the hippies and all that. And I was like, these are my people. They're starting, they were having consciousness awakenings, maybe via LSD or meditation or whatever, transcendental meditation. But I could talk to people about these things, and they actually not only accepted it, but many of them were having those experiences too, including all the ET stuff and the angel stuff and the spirit stuff and the guides. And so I would say around age 13 or 14, I started realizing, well, this is real. I'm not crazy and I'm not weird. I'm weird, but I'm not an alien, and I can learn more about it. And that's, I was always very studious. So that's when I started studying ancient philosophy, all the other religions, all the things that I could about the paranormal, everything. And it started to make more sense as I started studying chemistry, biology, physics, zoology, all of those things. And then ultimately in my early 20s, quantum physics, which put everything together for me. So you asked about the teachers. It's probably been, 8 or 10 years ago. I was in a session in my office, and I was doing energy work on a lady who came to me who was terminally ill. In fact, she was so ill with cancer that they had done everything, and she they basically sent her home to get her affairs in order. And one of her family members bought her a gift certificate to come to a session with me. And she did not believe in anything that was not, Western medicine. She had in fact, she wasn't even religious either. She was just, and she had it. She's like, all right, I'll go because there's nothing else. And she didn't want to hurt her family members' feelings. So she was here, and she was lying on a massage table. It was dark in the room with some candles and some music. And I was doing energy work on her. And suddenly the ceiling opened up. There's the star field. There's a huge ship over the office. And these 7.5, 8 feet tall, transparent, humanoid type beings came into the room. They were transparent, but they're kind of mirrory, and you could see streams of different colors of light that I'd never seen these colors before going through them. No facial features, just kind of a, mirror face, loving. And they just, they just were telepathically saying, we're here to help with this and teach you some new things. Well, one actually came right behind me and slipped my body on, and I could see my hands and everything doing different things. And I got all of this information coming into my head really through here. It was like going through a wormhole of symbols and processes and things. Anyway, they all worked on her. We all worked on her. And then just as suddenly as that started, it was back to normal. And the session was over. And as I do at the end of my sessions, I have the person sit up. I offer them some energy blessed water, and have them drink, share water. And then I said, how do you feel? And she said, I'm perfect. And I said, oh, really? Because she was very ill when she came in. I said, really, you feel better? And she's like, no, you don't understand. I'm perfect. There's nothing wrong with me. I'm completely perfect. And I said, awesome. Well, wonderful. And do you want to tell me did you have any kind of experience while we were doing the work? And she literally almost word for word told me she saw what I saw. And I told her what I saw, and we knew that it was real. And so after that, we we said our goodbyes. She went to a follow-up examination about 2 weeks later, and there was no cancer. And she eventually went off and had a great life. Well, immediately after that, they kept coming in and saying, you have to start holding, events where we can speak to more numbers of people than just one-on-one. And so I did. And people kept saying, well, who is it that you're channeling? Who do you call them? So I asked them, said, we've evolved, we're you having evolved to a higher frequency, and we've evolved past duality and the ego desire for a label. And I said, but people want to know, what do we call you? And they said, you can call us the star teachers or the teachers. And so they've been with me and assisting ever since. And eventually they revealed that they're kind of the main group that has always been with me. And, not just in this incarnation, but in many incarnations. So that's the story.
Wow. Yeah.
It's a lot.
It's beautiful. When you talk about them, I feel like the color behind you, that deep indigo color, I feel that really depicts their energy too. That deep indigo. Yeah. Beautiful. Beautiful. Wow. Yeah. The teachers, I love them. Did they give you any information about your multidimensional star lineage? Like, did you ask them those questions?
Initially I did, and I always get my little hand slapped for that. And anyone who asks that question in a session, when I'm channeling them, also gets, lovingly slapped. I asked, and I got the same answer everybody else gets. You came from source.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Stop playing so small and thinking you're only a third dimensional person, maybe coming from a different planet or star system in this universe. This is a speck compared to what reality is, to what they call the cosmic reality. And I said, well, a lot of people want to know where they come from. And they said, well, with each person, you can tell them where the snapshot of what they are right now, what we're looking at right now, where they came from when they weren't on Earth, their physical lineage, if they're talking about physical. But for me, most of it is Syrian. And there've been several people who've come to me recently who they get that same answer. And for me, as for a lot of these other people, they say, but it's Sirius B, not Sirius A. And there's two Siriuses. They're a binary star system, and you cannot see Sirius B without a powerful telescope. But the interesting thing is that there is a tribe in Africa, an ancient indigenous tribe, who worships the star gods from Sirius B. They have star charts that they painted on rock caves, 25,000 years ago. And the star map shows Sirius B, but they didn't have telescopes back then. So how did they know? And they said, that's where we come from.
Is that the picture that you had on your Facebook page recently? Those wall drawings? Yeah. Yeah, they look like, funnily enough, when I looked at that, because when John shared in his hypnosis, he didn't see the robot Astro Man. What was the robot called? Whatever.
Ultraman.
Ultraman.
Yeah. Ultraman.
He saw an insectoid, and it was an ant being. When I was looking at the pictures on your Facebook, those rock carvings, they looked like the ant beings, like depiction of the ant being, like with the antennas.
With the antennae, right?
The sort of,
and when it's hard to compress. His session lasted 5.5, 6 hours. It was very long because so much was coming out, and we didn't want to cut. And I only had a short amount of time to be in Pittsburgh, and so we tried to cram it. But to cram 6 hours of information into a 92-minute movie, along with everybody else's stories, there's a lot that's not in there yet, but there will be more revealed. But some point. Well, and even in this movie, he says, I'm in it looks like a cave, it's a underground. And that fits perfectly with those ant type people, who, even I believe the Hopi or some of our indigenous people over here in the United States and South America even have those ant cultures that say they live under the ground. Well, of course they would take him into a cave instead of a spaceship.
Inner
right?
Earth. Yeah, because
Yeah.
it collaborates with what I've heard from other people having that experiences with the same type of beings, that they are actually in inner Earth. And
Yes.
these ant beings that are like humanoid, like enormous humanoid ants, which seems crazy, but
No, nothing seems crazy to me.
nothing seems crazy
I've
anymore.
seen so much, Karen. What scares people in sci-fi movies, I'm like, yeah, well, I've seen that, but I've seen worse. I've seen more interesting things, but a lot of things are starting to come together now. These puzzle pieces are starting to come together, aren't they? We and also the visions that shamans and curanderos and all of these other people, these sacred people, have been having with using plant. I call them teachers. Some people call it medicine. Again, there's teachers, these plant teachers, all these visions that they have. And they've painted on those rock caves thousands of years ago. Look a lot like what people are seeing with these contact experiences now.
Yeah, exactly.
How can that be unless it's real and it's consistent and constant, right? So
yeah, exactly. I love that your teachers, because I had someone on the show. What was her name? I think her name was Debbie as well, who does that specifically. She does readings for people, telling them about their galactic lineage, because people are so curious. And it's not like you come from those planets, because just like the teacher said, you come from source, and then from that perspective, you get to play in the cosmos. You get to play like when I asked them that same question, where do I come from? And they said, how you're really curious as a human? I said, yes. They said, do you think that you're any less curious as a soul? And I went, guess not. They said,
no.
You explore everywhere.
Everything.
Like you've been everywhere.
So
you love to know everything. And I'm like, okay. And then I said,
awesome.
so what are the influences? It's not like you come from the planet, but you have some influences depending on what you're choosing to do with your life here. And they said, like Arcturian influences and Palladian and Syrian influences. But you can access anything when you open your mind.
You sure can. And I liken it to, I call myself a mutt. My human lineage from both of my parents, it's very diversified. But there are certain parts of my heritage that I seem to have embodied. I'm not so much, the tiny bit of Scottish that is in my mother's heritage, but I'm quite a bit Irish from her lineage and have French qualities from my father's lineage. It's just, so I look at it that way. It doesn't mean I didn't come from source, that I came from France. No. But like you say, it's the influences or the personality, the major signatures that you have. So when they do tell someone, well, if you want to know who you are from in the physical, originally you came from a planet around star Sirius B. That's fine, because beyond that, they probably weren't dimensional. They were probably interdimensional, transdimensional. They might have been a being of light. Who knows?
Exactly.
The other factions that we can't even imagine now. But there are times when I lead, especially when I lead groups. I'll do group quantum experiences. I call them quantum immersions. people will go somewhere and meet up with another part of themselves, another version of themselves that it's not even light. It might be some kind of energy we don't understand, and yet they get so much information, and then I'll have a person who said, I was a toad, and it was the most interesting experience I've ever had, So
a toad,
a toad,
like a frog,
like a frog.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. And the information she got from her quantum twin as that toad was phenomenal. But you can never tell. So, we come from everything. I tend to believe, and no one needs to buy into this, but it goes along with quantum science for me, that we live all lives. There's, Carl Jung said there's only one mind in the universe, and it's you. And the reflections of you. We are a fractal holographic jewel that, looks at itself through many different perspectives, so why wouldn't that mean that we live all the lives, infinitely, and we're just tuning into the different ones. And and when we see another human being, like I'm talking to you, I'm literally, you're talking to yourself, basically. And I tell people that in my sessions. Nothing I say comes from me. It's you talking to yourself from another version. But humans, this comes from psychology. Humans are very outward referring and often don't really trust in what is going on in here, the voices in their head, so to speak. But when they hear it from someone else, it's almost like they have permission to believe it if it resonates. So I think that's why there's more than one of us. I think we like to have those other reflections to interact with, or to be angry with, or to laugh with, or whatever. But nothing happens in these sessions from me. I'm just there to guide and hold space, basically, and it's all coming from the person.
Yes, I was going to ask you a question. What is the teaching that the teachers most teach you? But I think that you've just said it. It's like we are one.
Well,
you are me, and
I'm
you're a fractal of me. Yeah.
The oneness. There's another big teaching that they bring into all the channelings. A lot of the time, up until the movie dropped, or right before the movie, when it got so busy, I would do monthly, just free online Zooms, and channel the teachers, and then there'd be interactive, people could ask questions. I need to do another one of those very quickly here, they're telling me. But basically what their main message, since they became really public, is you actually did it. You humans did it. You in this lifetime, in this timeline that we're looking at right now, you literally figure it out and jump over that threshold. You hit escape velocity to move up to the next level, where you are not in the frequency where there is, greed and negativity and duality and karmic patterning and all of that. You do it, but you come very frighteningly close to obliterating yourselves before you catch on. So what they're saying is things might seem very dire when you look at the world outside of you, if you tend to pay attention to those things. But don't be afraid. Know that those are the signs of it's coming to a head, and very soon you're going to realize that working together in harmony and accepting each other's variances is exactly how you live in an equitable and harmonious life. And once you do, your focus is sustained to that next frequency where you already exist as us, but living in a co-creative, equitable, harmonious, and abundant life. You don't deal with this stuff down here anymore. This is just one construct. And most of the humans are finished with that. I call it the science lab. We built a science lab to have some experiences, some experiments with each other, and we've gotten as much of it as we need. And now we want to go play somewhere else. It's getting boring and it's getting ugly. So they're saying that we actually did it because if we hadn't succeeded, they wouldn't exist. They call us their future ancestors. They say that eventually, we do move up. We start to get along with each other. We reestablish this as a paradise planet. And then we become much more knowledgeable. Most of us, go off to explore other realms, others, not just physical space, but interdimensional space. And eventually the human race becomes what one would call extraterrestrial or interdimensional. And that's who they are. So that's the main message. Every single channeling that they give, that message is in there. You've already done it. You just have to sustain your focus on that plane of what you want and stop paying so much attention to this negative kind of vibrational state that this timeline has found itself in.
Yeah, like you say, this negative construct. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm seeing, and people reaching out to me all the time to put their stories on the shows, is like John, where they think that they're one person and sort of racked with fear that maybe they don't even understand they've got. They're just bipping along and doing their lives, and then bang, and then they have this amazing experience where they reach their higher self, which is what happened in your session with John. He thinks that he's just going to look at, that missing time and figure out what happened to him as a kid. But there was this quantum leap from that to him now channeling his higher self. And when I had him on the show last week, he said, that really blew my mind. Like, that really kind of scared me. And I think that as humans, it's a bit like your teachers are saying, it's like we have to own that part of ourselves as being us and not something that's other than us, like that higher aspect, that exalted wisdom that can channel through us. Do you want to talk about your experience with John as he or anyone really as they reach that
higher self? And that's part of every session. And in fact, what's incredible, I'll just put a little sidebar over here, is very recently, the last year or two, a lot of the people come to me, there's kind of a little process where you do this practice together. Well, first you have a nice discussion, you look over their questions, and then we go into the quantum hypnosis session proper, where we'll look at a couple of other life realities, past lives, future lives, whatever. And then I will ask permission to speak with the higher self so that we can tie it all together. That's you. And there's healing and stuff that happens there. But really recently, last couple of years, a lot of people come in. We have this, I tell them the outline of the agenda, usually of how it rolls. And we'll get started with that session, and boom, they're with the higher self. And the whole session is the higher self. And that is happening more and more and more. It's almost like they're like, we don't have time to waste with you looking at these piddly-poo other lives. They're all cool. You can do that on your own time. We want FaceTime right now with you. And I have, I've been with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people hearing their higher selves talk. It's always the same voice. It's always that very authoritative, all-knowing, just, there's love there, but it's like a very wise parent, and sometimes stern, and they always seem to speak in the third person when higher self comes through. But John chose to do his session seated on a couch, and you see that in the film. A lot of people like to lie down or recline. He wanted to sit up, but he was relaxed during his session, and just talking about everything as we were journeying. Then when asked to see the higher self or speak to the higher self, his body got really big and straight and tall, and this booming voice, as you know, came out and gave so much good information. And then suddenly, after quite a while of that, his eyes just popped open, like I didn't even bring him back. And I said, "Oh, you're back." And he said, "Yes." But it still wasn't just my John. It was higher self John. And that's when the real information came through. And we just kept it rolling, because he just kept sending out all this information about what humanity was going to go through, and that there was a plan, and there was a plan for him, there's a plan for the planet, and so forth. It was the most astonishing session I've ever had in all my years. And I say this a lot. You can't surprise me with anything. That surprised me. It was such a directive that came through.
I went all chill bumps then when you just said that. I was just like,
oh.
Yeah.
I still get them, and I was there, and I've seen that footage 100 times, and I'm still, oh my gosh, that was, I liken it to how, it must have felt to be Moses to speak to the burning bush or something. Only even better. So,
and I think that he has a problem owning that, because like I said to him on the show, you saw me, he's still very self-deprecating. He's still like, oh, please forgive me, I'm like all that sort of,
always that I'm just a regular Joe. He's always that way. But he's coming into his own. People have to grow into their bigger selves.
Yeah,
I don't usually call mine my higher self. I call it my big self. Mm-hmm. And now I have it's just nicknamed my big. Mm-hmm. It takes a while to grow into your big, and he's a very humble, gracious person, as you know. So some of that self-deprivation kind of thing, it's just him being humble. He's actually being sincere. That's not an insincere thing, but it is indicative of how of the problem. I call it the problem, where people don't accept that they might actually be the creator.
Right.
Right? Because what happens there? Number one, they've been programmed all their lives to believe that, respect authority, and, you're not all that, and, don't be arrogant, and honor your father and mother, and listen to your teacher, and listen to your priest, and listen to your president or whatever.
And God is separate to you.
And God is separate to you.
Mm-hmm.
And it is absolutely not true. So there's that piece that's very hard to bring back into the consciousness. But
Mm-hmm.
then there's something else too that's even more important. If you really are the creator, doesn't that bear some very difficult or hard to accept responsibility? If you're the creator, you're responsible for everything. And most people already have had it up to here with responsibility, and they don't want any more. You can't add one more task to their day. And, so what that's saying is you have to be consciously self-aware all the time and do what is best for everyone. Do no harm. Well, that's a huge task for a human brain to understand, but it's not really.
Mm. What the mob is saying to me is that responsibility is only a burden if you have a negative connotation attached to it.
You are absolutely spot on, my dear. That is it in a nutshell.
That's them talking through me.
Oh, it's it in a nutshell. This is fun because your mom's talking to my mom, and this is amazing.
Yeah. Exactly.
But it's the truth, don't you feel it? It's the truth.
Yeah.
It's nothing. It is not a burden.
Mm.
It's an honor. It's a privilege.
Mm.
It's your joy.
Yeah.
If, to be able to help others is wonderful.
I often see that taking on the responsibility as being the creator. If you look at the movie industry, because I worked in the movie industry when I was a young naturopathic student, and you look at the way we create film and movie, you know, we create characters and we create the villain.
True.
And that story, that movie, that creation of ours as a director or a writer or a producer is our baby, you know, and we love the villain as much as we love the heroine. And so, yeah, you know, we create all of it, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And yeah, and even the ego and the personality, like I'm often in touch with my higher self that just loves that little me, that worries, that fears, that questions. You know, she just like, she is you are my creation. That ego part of you, that personality, you are my creation, like a character in a movie, and I love you. You know, and so
she's your child.
Yeah. And so I see the me that is curious and wants to ask a lot of questions, and, you know, wants to know that sort of that, because obviously the higher self has all the answers and then the lower self doesn't. And so they ask the questions. We ask the questions because we don't know. We get self-deprecating and we beat up on ourselves and criticize ourselves. But yeah, we can love all that as well as a creation of our higher self. Yeah, and play that role.
It's all part of the perfection that we are. Mm-hmm. I have a question for you, Karen. Do you know what your first word was?
No, I don't. No.
I just wondered if you were. Mine was why.
Oh, wow.
How awful for my parents. Can you imagine?
I would say that mine was why too.
Why? Oh, my Lord.
Funny. Why? That's funny.
I bet it was yours too.
Probably. Most babies say da, 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 or mama, mama. Mm-hmm. I remember my daughter, now I can't even remember. I did tell her and I did write it down. It's too many years ago now. I think she said something like shoes or something. It's some random word. That was her first word. I'm like, that's her first word. Why? That's hilarious. I love that.
My youngest son's first word was exit, believe it or not.
Wow.
Exit. Yeah, it's a funny little story, but, you know, I was taught my sons to read and learn math and so forth as a game from birth on. Just, you know, it was just a matter of what we did with each other. It wasn't a formal thing. And so my youngest son, John, was barely, you know, putting words together, but I had flashcards of all the words. And so he could read before he could put sentences together verbally. And at the time, his grandmother had a heart attack and was in the hospital. So we're in the hospital and I'm there with my 4-year-old and my baby in the waiting room. And of course, you know, over the door, there's that big bright red exit sign. Oh. And we were doing the cards and everything. And he kept pointing up at that. And I realized he recognized that was a word. So I said, exit. And, you know, for a week we were there doing stuff and he would point and say exit, which is fine. He was mimicking. But when we were finally, you know, just sitting around at home and he wasn't doing his little reading exercise, I said, "How are you today, baby?" And he said, "Exit." And everything was exit.
That's hilarious.
I don't know what that means. Don't know what it means, but
I think he enjoyed the sound of the word. It's kind of a cool word. Exit.
Kind of a cool word. Also, he, you know, maybe he came into this life. He's like, exit.
How have your family? How do they? You know, are they on board with you? When I say on board with you, are they psychic as well, or have they gone into more mainstream vocations? How's your interaction with them?
For the most part, they're all mainstream, including my children. When they were younger, though, they will hate me for saying this on film, but both my sons had contact early on. I never talked to them about it or we didn't speak about it, but they were constantly drawing pictures of their little friends. And I have tons of stories I could tell you that validate that they were having contact. As they got older, of course, they didn't want to stand out or anything. And so they kind of went mainstream, and that's fine. Now, I have 4 grandchildren, 3 grandsons and 1 granddaughter, and they have also had contact. In fact, two of my grandsons from that youngest son. I had a major contact event with them and their mother when we were going trick-or-treating for Halloween. In 2011, there was a huge mothership that came up in front of us, and I filmed on my little iPhone 5. In fact, there's a snippet of it in the film. It's a UFO up in the sky with lots of sparkling lights. You only see it for a split second, but that's mine. But at the time, my oldest grandson, I think, was 4, and the youngest was 1, or it was 5 and 2. But the little one said, "Oh, that's that one that's over our house at night when they come to play." And the other one's like, "Yeah." And he said, "What?" And they said, yeah. Anyway, there's a lot more to that story. It finally was Linda Moulton Howe and the move, because I reported it to MUFON after what the MUFON director for the state of Missouri and Linda Moulton Howe went on to Coast Radio and told that story. So there's a lot more to it. But so those grandchildren all have had contact, and my siblings did too, at least 2 of the 3 that I know of. My brother Mark is, our stories featured in the film a little bit from when I was 9 and he was 8, and we saw a big ship in the middle of the night in the forest. That's a whole tale to tell for another time. But to this day, I think he's still, after childhood, he believes that we both had the same dream. He doesn't want to admit that was real, but how unreal a statement is that no, we were just kids and we had the same dream.
Yes, the human mind can be very closed, as we know.
Yeah.
But interestingly enough, like, you've been bipping along doing your work for so many years, and just seeing private clients and having small groups, and they can kind of, ignore you a little bit, like, Mum, she does her thing. But now that you're in a movie, you can't. And because I see this movie getting a lot of attention, not like a Hollywood movie, but for a documentary of this on this topic, I see it doing really well. And they can't really ignore that. How are they feeling about you being in the movie and in the film?
Well, before it was released, there was actually like a closing off, because we were doing a lot of marketing, a lot of social media and stuff, and they were uncomfortable. They both live lives in a small country town. They both have great jobs. They're very successful and everything, but they're more mainstream, everyday guys, and their friends are all that way. And it's embarrassing. Nobody wants to stand out like a, sore thumb. So that was a little bit uncomfortable. And I think we've just agreed to not talk about it that much, but it's out there now. It's all across the board, 5-star ratings on Amazon. It's like 8 out of 10 on iTunes. It's its highest ratings on IMDb. You just can't get away from it. And pretty soon it's going to be international. And so I just try to be as compassionate and loving as I can with everyone. I maintain a corporate presence still and everything. And so you just meet people where they are. And I don't talk about it if they don't bring it up. But if I go to a family event and all their friends are there and they're all talking about it, it's really kind of hard to deny. So I think, it'll all play out. But I think they would rather I was just a regular mom at this point. But I am who I am. And
you know what I say to that? Tough luck. Time to wake up, kids. Can't be sleeping anymore.
Nope.
You can, life affords us the opportunity to have our mainstream 3D lives and to be completely ignorant to all this stuff. But have you not heard? Humanity's going through a shifted consciousness. It's like, I know. There's no, the time for being asleep is over. Sorry.
It's like what we were saying a while ago about people don't want to accept that they might be the creator. It's the
Right.
same thing. They don't want to accept that that this is actually happening.
Right.
It's undeniable that it's happening.
It's
I mean,
undeniable.
you cannot look at anything without being hit in the face about UFOs, ETs,
Right.
you know, quantum consciousness, just everything. All of this is it's getting more and more the mainstream conversation. You can't hide from it forever.
Right.
But, I think that's part of my work too, not just helping to wake people up, but also helping them through this transition in a compassionate and loving way. Some little kids are terrified to get on a bicycle and learn how to ride a bicycle. You have to take extra care with that child, So that's not just with my own children, but with the global children.
Yeah.
That's where I am. So
yeah, because like you, I've been doing this for a long time, and I've been podcasting or on radio for about 12 years, and I've seen the evolution in the expansion of consciousness and the evolution of the conversations that are available for us online, out there on radio, online.
Incredible.
And John was on the Jeff Mara podcast, and I was just on as well, and we chatted about that. And anyway, have you been on it? I'll introduce you to Jeff.
I have not been on it. I would love it. I think
he does this as a profession. I don't do this podcast as a profession. I do it just to spread consciousness. So I do it once a week. He does, he speaks to somebody every day. I think it's 7 days a week. I think he does, or at least 6 days a week. And then on the other day, he does a bit of a group conversation. But his podcast is only 2 years old, and it is just raging. Like the amount of views that he gets, it just flabbergasts me. But what it says to me is, wow, look at the amount of people that want to listen to these conversations. Like it's just the expansion of consciousness. So I celebrate what he's doing. And he started it. Too. He started it anyway. We're going to explore his story in a few weeks, but I don't think he started the podcast to talk about spiritual stuff. I think that he was interested in NDEs, and he had one person on the show that talked about NDE, New Zealand girl, Chris, I can't remember her name. And then it just it exploded, and then he went in that direction. I don't think he meant to, but he just followed that flow of the people seeking this information. And so it's, we can't ignore it.
And you see, that's how it works. Yeah. That's how it works. If you allow things to flow, and you can start out with a little outline of a plan that you might want to do, or something you want to achieve, but you get in your own way when you try to control all of that. When you just go with, that's the universal message too. Follow your bliss, follow your highest excitement, follow your joy, and do everything with love.
Follow your curiosity too.
Your curiosity. Well, I count that as excitement. I have never been curious without being excited. You think about that? So, but it all seems to morph into whatever, and you just have to trust it. As wacky or illogical as something seems, right. If that feeling state is there, that's your inner GPS system saying, keep on that road. If it's not there anymore, you need to look for it over here, because until you tune into it, because that's where you're supposed to connect.
Yeah.
So
totally. Oh, darling, well, we've been yakking for about an hour and a half now.
I know. I'm sorry.
We should don't apologize. It's so beautiful and synchronistic that we were able to do that, especially just after I've spoken to John. So thank you, universe. I mean, that lovely lady that I was emailing that didn't, I'll eventually talk to her because she's gorgeous. She channels some teachers as well. And
lovely.
I felt very aligned with her too, another soul sister in the States. But yeah, the universe worked it out so we could chat this week right after John, which was perfect, really.
Well, thank you, because I know you were hoping for a day off, and you actually gave that up for me, and I really appreciate that.
I was like, if she doesn't turn up, I'll just have the day off. Yeah. But look, I love doing that. I've the guides have said to me, do more teaching and less of this sort of showcasing other people. But it's such a joy to speak with people. I just love it. I just absolutely love it. Every time I think I'm going to be just channeling the guides and not doing the podcast show anymore, I don't do it because it's just such a joy. So I love speaking to people.
Oh, I love it.
Any last messages for people that you want to share?
Be the best you can be. That's how we all do this. Just really come from the pure place of your heart, and don't doubt anything. Don't doubt who you are. Don't be afraid. You are unlimited, and we are infinite beings, and we are meant to express that in every second of our being. And so don't play small. Don't be arrogant. Be loving and kind and humble, but definitely don't be afraid. There is absolutely nothing to be afraid of. And enjoy the journey. It's just so much fun, Just enjoy it all. And be the best you can be. That's it.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us, Debz. It's been a blessing.
Thank you, Karen. It's such a blessing to finally get to meet you and to speak with you. What an honor. I adore you. Thank you so much. I hope we can talk again. I can't wait.
How awesome is Debz? Isn't she fabulous? Loved that conversation with her. Oh, we had a long chat, as you do, after the show, and I booked her into the Inner Sanctum. I said, I've booked out for this year because I've got everyone in, and then I realized that I'd totally forgotten about October, and I hadn't booked anyone in October. I'll tell you what, the star teachers are really making this connection between her and I, because normally I don't forget about an entire month to book in a teacher. That is bizarre. Like, I looked at the schedule and I'm like, I haven't got anyone booked in for October. How'd that happen? Because I've booked November and December and even into next year. Anyway, so bizarre. Yeah, soul sister. The teachers, I recognize her teachers, same teachers teach through me, the mob that I reverently call the mob. Yeah, she's beautiful. We were just talking about how she's been doing work with Costa McCrease, who I've had on the show, doing the CE5s and mass meditations. And she said that they did a sort of online conference, mass meditation, and they had like over 10,000 people join. And I'm like, whoa, we were talking about, on the show, we were talking about how this work is expanding, and it really is. And we were also talking about, after the show, she said that she's got a lot of Australian clients, and I said, I've got a lot of American clients. Isn't that funny? And I said, I asked you specific questions about how people react to who you are and stuff, because I get so many American people saying to me, I'm the only one I know in my family or my friends that thinks about this stuff, and nobody else wants to talk about it, and everyone thinks I'm crazy. So that's a lot. We have that conversation a lot with the people that join my groups, my Zoom groups. And she said that she gets that conversation from Australians too. And I said, really, where are they? But she said more from places like Tasmania, because there's a huge conscious community in Sydney. And but she was saying that people could contact her more from outside of Sydney. It's amazing to me, because I'm marinating in this conversation, and everyone I talk to is like all my friends, like everybody. And so it's amazing to me to think that people don't tune into this conversation at all, that I forget that there's the mainstream world out there that just don't think about this stuff, and they don't want to think about this stuff. Even my daughter, who sort of like doesn't want to talk about ETs and asks me to stop talking about ETs, she has this conversation with her friends. It's her generation. They talk about consciousness and meditation, and she spent some time with some Buddhist monks down in a temple down the south coast recently. So she's into the conversation. She just doesn't want to talk about it from an ET perspective, which I find hilarious. That'll change, of course. But it's amazing to me that anyway, that's what these shows are all about. And I love hearing stories of people that have these really successful, linear, mainstream human vocations, lives, and then they have this massive spiritual awakening, and they have these 180-degree shifts in their life from thinking that they're one person to another. And that was somebody that I've just has reached out to be on the show, through the death of her son, and that's many of the conversations I have on the show, through the death experience, awakened by death, or ET contact experience. Yeah, the world is waking up. The world is waking up. So if you're one of those people that thinks you're all alone. You are not. There are millions and millions and millions of people that are having this conversation. You just have to find your tribe. Your vibe attracts your tribe. So you will attract those people to you the more you start realizing that what you once thought was crazy and woo-woo is now your truth, and that you are this infinite multidimensional being that can access broader awareness and fly anywhere in the cosmos, really, that you will attract others that know that too. Whether it's initially on Zoom, but definitely in the physical, because the thing about this is that most people don't talk about it when they're out at their parties or at work, because they don't want to be seen as crazy or ridiculed. But when you are brave enough to open up and say, I believe in contacting extraterrestrial life and higher civilization, talking to dead people and psychic ability and all that stuff, when you do openly talk about it, you find that there are others that also don't talk about it that go, yeah, I believe in that too. And so you start finding your tribe. But it's been so ridiculed through our media system. Still today, I see mainstream news programs, bashing people that think that they're psychic and stuff like that. It's been so ridiculed that people are reticent to talk about it openly. But yeah, talk about it openly. Talk about it openly, and you'll find more people in your physical space that want to talk about it openly, even if they've just opened the door. It's just ajar, and they want to open that door even wider to see what's beyond this mental construct that we have created in this world, which is rooted in limited thinking and limitation and separateness. To find that unity, I think all of us, no matter who we are or what we do or what we think or what we believe, all of us want more love in our lives, want more to feel more unified with love. There isn't a person alive that doesn't want to return to the truth of their source, even if they speak about it in a way that is very mainstream. My boyfriend, husband, partner left me and I'm heartbroken. That's that desire to return to that feeling of love, which doesn't ultimately come from the other. It comes from your connection to yourself, to your inner being, to your higher self, to your divine presence. And in a way, all of us are asking for that in one way or another. We're asking for it in our careers. We're asking for fulfillment, and in our relationships, and in the stuff that we want. We gather more stuff, or we eat, or we drink, or because we're looking for that feeling of unity that we're thinking that we don't have in this polarized world which explores separateness so beautifully. So yeah, we're all having that conversation in a way. Anyway, I'm going to go, and I'll see you this weekend in the Inner Sanctum. Beautiful Jill is coming to talk about being a prenatal medium. She's excited. She sent me a message. And dragon energy, more dragon in the group, the Inner Sanctum group. We've got a chat group on Facebook. Lots of dragons, lots of dragon energy. The dragon energy is fierce in our group. But there's just, we've been talking a lot about dragons. And I posted a picture of this big rock in a cave that looks like a dragon eye I saw on Facebook this morning. Dragons. So we're going to have more dragons this weekend in the Inner Sanctum. And Debz is going to come and chat to us in October, which would be great. We'll channel the teachers, and get some messages from the star teachers. Beautiful. All right. Love you all. Big time. Thanks again for listening and watching. And remember, check out the book Awakened by Death if you haven't already. Big love. Bye for now.